You're listening to the radio while the ground breathes beneath your feet. And if you can hear me, then maybe that means the earth hasn't swallowed you whole yet. Not today, not this hour. That's something worth noting in a world like this where the land itself feels restless, like it wants to shake us off its skin. The world as it stands now is not the one I grew up in. It's not the one you remember either, if you're old enough to remember before. Back then, the ground was steady. The air carried scents of wet grass, gasoline, and cheap coffee drifting from corner shops. Now, the air burns thick with the smell of sulfur and ash, like the inside of a furnace that never cools. Breathing is survival work, a deliberate act. Lungs dragging in what's left and coughing out what they can't keep. The climate didn't collapse all at once. It unraveled. First came the rains, some predictable, violent downpours that carved streets into rivers and basements into tombs. Then came the droughts, years without a drop of mercy, where rivers shrank into dust veins, cracked and hollow. Somewhere between those extremes, the wildfires found their voice. They didn't whisper anymore. They screamed across forests, devoured plains, and lit the edges of suburbs until houses melted into slag. But the strangest thing, the thing that keeps us from sleeping easy is the earth itself. It heaves, it sighs. Some call it aftershocks. Some say it's the mantle shifting. Others whisper about punishment, about the planet deciding it's had enough of us. Roads buckle overnight. Sinkholes swallow entire blocks of concrete and steel like they were never there. I've seen bridges twist into pretzels, skyscrapers tilt like drunks and collapse in on themselves as if tired of holding up the weight of the sky. Former landmarks, gone or worse mutated. The old downtown where I once walked to catch the bus is now a skeletal ruin. The clock tower that marked the city center is snapped in half, frozen in permanent midnight. Football fields are deserts of cracked clay, bleachers half buried in drifting sand. Lakes drained themselves, leaving behind bowls of mud and salt, where rusted boats lie like corpses abandoned in a mass grave. The government, that's a word from another lifetime. First, they promised relief, then rationing, then rebuilding. All gone now. Radio silence. Maybe some bunker politicians are still out there, clinging to the illusion of control. But if they are, they've abandoned us to the dirt and fire. Civilization has shrunk into pockets clusters of survivors who trade what scraps they have, or prey on each other like wolves. Scavenger groups roam the highways, burning fuel like blood, stripping what little is left: copper, canned goods, ammunition. Some survivors form tight-knit communes, barricaded against outsiders, cultivating rooftop gardens or siphoning groundwater through half-broken filters. Then there are the factions, the ones with guns and slogans, convinced they can build a kingdom on ash. They'll kill for water, for fuel, sometimes for nothing but the satisfaction of dominance. Institutions, none worth naming. Hospitals are empty husks, gurneys rusting in hallways. Schools are shells where chalkboards crumble, desks overturned, graffiti carved into the walls by kids who didn't make it. The internet is long dead. Libraries are burned or gutted for kindling. What knowledge remains is in the mouths of survivors, scattered, imperfect. The only thing that still carries. Across distance is the crackle of radios like this one. And even then, most frequencies are static. Nothing but ghosts whispering through the static, reminding us how alone we really are. When I walk outside my bunker, I feel the anxiety coil in my chest. The ground moves when it shouldn't. Pavement. lifts as though something alive is crawling underneath. Sometimes the soil exhales steam, a rotten breath from the deep earth. The animals sense it to what few remain. Stray dogs howl at empty lots, eyes wide, fur mangy, ribs sticking through their skin. Birds don't fly the same anymore, wings jerking mid-air like the wind betrays them. And then there are the silences, the moments where everything goes still. Not a sound, not a breath, as though the world is holding itself before another collapse. Each sunrise feels less certain. The horizon glows the wrong color, sometimes sickly green, sometimes bruised purple. Never the blue and gold I remember. The sky itself looks ill. Nights don't bring relief. They bring the grounds, slow shifting, the low moan of tectonic plates, the shudder that rattles cans in my shelter and makes me wonder if the ceiling will hold. We used to talk about rebuilding, about fixing the grid, purifying the water, planting seeds for a new world. Now the talk is smaller. Can I make it another week? Can I stretch this gallon of water 3 more days? Can I trust the stranger knocking at my door? That's the world you're waking to, if you wake at all. The world we broke, now breaking us in return. The world where the ground itself doesn't want to hold us anymore. But if you're still out there, listening, that means you've got one more breath, one more heartbeat, one more chance to stand on this restless earth. That means hope hasn't given up on you yet. Asterisk, my name doesn't matter anymore. Maybe I told you once. Maybe you caught it through the static, or maybe you just imagined it. Gave me some name to hold on to so you wouldn't feel like you were listening to a ghost. I was someone before all this. Man with a mortgage, a son, a wife who loved wildflowers, a job that chained me to a desk. But those names, those titles, they belong to a world that stopped breathing long before the ground started. Now I'm just the voice, a signal bouncing through the air, rattling against what's left of antennas and cracked receivers. If you hear me, then that makes us companions, even if we'll never meet. In this world, companionship is rarer than clean water. So I keep talking, even if it feels like I'm only speaking to myself most nights. What do I do to survive? The list is simple, almost insultingly so. I ration, I scavenge, I hide. Some days I'm a rat, crawling through hollowed-out buildings, hunting for crumbs. Other days I'm a vulture, circling the wreckage of what used to be grocery stores, peeling cans from collapsed shelves, checking the dates even though they don't mean much anymore. Expired food is better than no food at all. I've got a bunker, of sorts not the military kind, not stocked with gold-plated supplies and air purifiers. Mine is a storm shelter buried beneath what used to be a mechanic's shop. The shop's gone now, collapsed into itself when the asphalt cracked like glass, but the basement held. I patched the walls with scavenged steel, set up a water catchment system that trickles into barrels when the sky decides to bleed rain instead of fire. It's not perfect sometimes. The water comes down acidic, and I have to run it through a filter I cobbled together from charcoal and cloth. But it's something. My generator is my lifeline. A pedal system built from the stripped parts of abandoned bicycles. When I turn it, I make light. I make sound. I make this broadcast possible. The hum of the generator is a lullaby now, a rhythm that tells me I'm still here. My legs ache after every shift on it, but the ache feels honest, like payment for survival. I spend a lot of time alone. Too much, maybe. Silence has weight, now it presses down, makes your own heartbeat sound louder, makes you hear whispers that aren't there. That's why I talk. That's why I keep this radio alive. Not just for whoever might be listening, but for me. To keep the walls of this bunker from closing in. To remind myself that I am not entirely erased. What drives me to keep going? Some days it's hope, fragile as a spider's web. Some days it's responsibility, a sense that if someone, anyone, is out there, then they deserve a voice telling them they're not alone. And some days, if I'm honest, it's habit. Survival becomes a rhythm. Wake up, check the water barrels, scavenge if the weather's stable, cycle the generator, eat, sleep, repeat. Hope doesn't always burn like a flame. Sometimes it flickers like a dying ember. But even embers can light kindling if the wind is right. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't haunted. I lost my family before the ground began to heave. It was the floods that took them. The river rose too fast, walls of water breaking through levees that were never built for storms like that. I was at work when it happened, a 3-story office. That gave me a false sense of safety. By the time I fought my way back through the current, the street where my house once stood was nothing but swirling brown water and floating wood. I never found their bodies. I like to imagine they're together somewhere, that the water carried them away to some place gentler than this. But I know better. That loss carved something into me that never healed. It hardened me, but it also tethered me to this cracked world. I can't bring them back, but I can refuse to die easily. I can keep breathing, keep talking, keep fighting for scraps of life, Evan, if it's only to spit in the face of the earth. That tried to bury me. I've lost other things too. Friends, neighbors, the idea of community. Once I thought maybe I could rebuild something, find others, join them, build walls high enough to keep out hunger and fear. But every group I've stumbled on has either been too desperate or too cruel. Desperation makes people dangerous. I've seen neighbors turn into raiders, friends turn into thieves. Trust became a luxury I couldn't afford. That doesn't mean I don't long for it. Sometimes I dream of voices, not the static-filled kind that bounce back to me through this old transmitter, but warm voices in the same room. Laughter, even arguments, would be a comfort. Anything to remind me of humanity's. Chorus, instead of this solo dirge, I sing into the air. There was one, once, a woman named Alina. I met her on a scavenging run in the ruins of a pharmacy. We startled each other, at first 2 ghosts hunting through the wreckage butt. We didn't pull weapons, instead we shared. She had antibiotics. I had clean water. For a time we traveled together, and I almost believed I could feel something like hope again. But hope is fragile, and this world doesn't let it last. She vanished one morning, without a word, leaving behind only a half-empty can of peaches and her scarf folded on my sleeping mat. Maybe she went looking for her own people. Maybe she didn't want to risk getting tied down to someone else. Maybe the ground opened up and took her. I'll never know. But I keep her scarf with me. It still smells faintly of lavender, impossibly, as if some part of the old world refuses to let go. So here I am, alone again, talking into static, breathing with the ground that doesn't want to hold me. There are nights when despair claws at me, when I pedal that generator until my legs burn, not for the power, but just to exhaust myself so sleep will come. There are mornings when the first thing I taste is ash, and I wonder if it's worth it dragging this body through another day of dust and silence. But then I remember the alternative. Silence is final. Silence means the world wins. So I speak. I broadcast. I whisper into the bones of a dead world, daring it to answer. Sometimes I imagine someone out there, hunched over, a battered radio, listening. Maybe they've got kids tucked under blankets, hungry and afraid. Maybe they've got nothing but the clothes on their back. Maybe they're just like me, tired, angry, but still unwilling to let go. I speak for them. I remind them that the ground may breathe beneath us, restless and cruel, but we are still here. We breathe, too. And as long as our lungs can drag in this poisonous air, there's a kind of defiance in that. I don't know what future lies ahead. I don't know if there is one. But I know this. I am the voice in the static. I am the hum of the generator. I am the stubbornness of survival. I am the grief of what was lost and the fragile ember of what might still be found. And if you can hear me now, then you are too. Asterisk, you're listening to the radio while the ground breathes beneath your feet. And if you've made it this far with me, then you already know the world isn't just hostile anymore. It's unrecognizable. The crisis pressing in on us now isn't one you can point to and say, that's the enemy. It isn't a man, a group, or even a single storm. It's the air itself. It's the sky, the soil, the ground we used to trust to hold us steady. Survival gets harder every day because the very system we built our lives on the earth is coming apart. It's drought, first and foremost. Years now without proper rain. Sure, storms come, but not the kind we prayed for. Not the soft drizzle that used to bead on window panes. When the rain comes, it's acid. It burns skin. It strips paint off metal. It poisons what little soil is left. Sometimes it rains mud, thick and heavy, carrying the ash of far-off wildfires or the dust of deserts that used to be farmland. So we don't wait for rain anymore. We fear it. I've learned to collect what little moisture the sky sometimes gives us at dawn. Condensation drawn on sheets of metal, tilted just so, funneled into jars. It's never enough. Some days I drink less than a cup of water. Dehydration is a slow killer, one you don't notice until your tongue feels like sandpaper and your skin cracks open around your knuckles. You can live 3 weeks without food, but water. 3 days, maybe less, especially in heat like this. And heat is constant now, the kind that presses against you, suffocates you. It isn't just summer. Anymore, every season is scorched. Asphalt bubbles and softens. Old car tires melt into sticky black pools. Step outside too long, and the soles of your boots start to peel. I read once, back when the internet still worked, that humans can only tolerate wet bulb temperatures. Up to 35 degrees Celsius, minus 95 degrees Fahrenheit, with full humidity, before our bodies lose the ability to cool themselves. I think we've passed that line more than once. That's why I travel only at night now, scavenging by moonlight, sleeping during the day in the bunker's cool dirt walls. But it isn't only drought and heat, it's instability. The ground really does breathe. Earthquakes small, constant ones roll through, like the world has developed a restless tremor. The scientists who were left before the last of their broadcasts went silent said it had something to do with aquifers collapsing underground. No more groundwater to hold up the layers of soil, so the earth caves in on itself. Sinkholes yawning open where entire neighborhoods used to stand. High-rises leaning until their shadows stretch crooked across the ruins. It makes travel dangerous. One moment you're walking a cracked road. The next, the road isn't there anymore. I once watched a truck vanish in front of me, swallowed whole. The sound of tearing asphalt like a scream. I didn't even have time to shout a warning. Just gone. dust rising in a cloud so thick I couldn't breathe. The driver never resurfaced. That's what we're up against. Not just scarcity, but betrayal. The Earth is betraying us. And then there are the others. Survivors, if you can call them that. Some are like Mejas, trying to endure, clinging to scraps of hope or ritual. But others, they've become predators. I call them the Squatchers, packs of raiders who thrive in this chaos, armed with rusted rifles and sharpened scrap metal. They move across the wasteland like a fire front, taking what they want: food, water, fuel, people. I've seen their signal fires burning on hillsides, warning others to stay away. I had an encounter with them 2 weeks ago. I was scavenging near the ruins of a water treatment plant, hoping against hope there'd be something left of the filters. Maybe a forgotten tank. That's when I heard them. Engines, coughing black smoke. A convoy of 3 trucks, armor-plated, with scavenged steel, spray-painted with flame symbols. I dove behind the rusted husk of a bus and watched. They weren't looking for me. They had someone else. A family, 2 adults, a kid. Couldn't have been more than 10. They dragged them out of the cab of a pickup, hands tied. I wanted to do something. God help me. I wanted to, but what could I do? One man with a half-loaded revolver against a dozen. So I stayed still, watched, listened. They left the kid screaming as they drove away with the parents. Left him sitting in the dust, tied to the bumper of a car with no wheels. When they were gone, I broke cover. Freed him, but he was silent. Shock, maybe. He wouldn't follow me, wouldn't drink, wouldn't speak. Just stared at the horizon where his parents disappeared. By morning, he was gone too. Walked out into the wastes while I slept. I never saw him again. That's what this world does. It breaks you down, not always with fire or hunger, but with the emptiness left behind, and resources, they're thinner every day. My canned food stockpile is dwindling. No new shipments, no agriculture to replace it. Just the relics of a system that no longer exists. When I break open a can of beans, I think about the factory workers who packed it, the trucks that shipped it, the shelves it once sat on. That entire web of labor and life gone. All that's left is me and the metal can in my hands. Fuel is worse. Gasoline goes bad, turns to varnish. I siphon what I can, use it sparingly in a camp stove or lantern. But every gallon is a gamble. Every spark risks drawing attention, or worse, burning through my supply with nothing to show for it. So survival becomes a balance, a calculation. Do I risk scavenging farther where the scorchers roam? Do I ration water more tightly and risk collapse? Do I sleep lightly, knowing the earth itself may shift beneath my bed? There's science to it, sure. I still remember fragments of data, CO levels rising past 500 ppm, ocean currents stalling, jet streams wobbling, permafrost melting and burping methane into the sky. I used to think climate change was a headline, a debate topic, something that would inconvenience my grandchildren. Turns out it was the apocalypse, just wearing a slower mask. And when it finally sped up, when tipping points toppled one after another, we had no brakes to pull. Some nights I try to calculate. If average rainfall dropped 60% in this region, if groundwater depletion continues at this rate, how long before every well is dry? But then I remind myself, calculations don't fill my canteen. Science doesn't quench thirst. Numbers can't stop the earth from swallowing itself. The truth is, survival is harder every day because the margin for error is gone in the old world You could make mistakes, forget to buy groceries, waste food, overspend your paycheck. Now, one mistake kills you. Misjudge the weather, drink the wrong water, trust the wrong face end of the line. That's the crisis. Not just the drought, not just the heat, not just the unstable ground. It's the total collapse of safety nets. Every step is a gamble. Every breath is a negotiation with the poisoned air. Every sip of water is borrowed time. And yet, here, I am, pedaling the generator, speaking into the static. Maybe you're out there, nodding, surviving your own small corner of hell. If so, then you understand. This isn't living. It's enduring. It's outlasting. It's becoming something. Smaller, harder, meaner than we used to. Beeve, but still breathing, still fighting. The ground breathes, and so do we. For now, broadcast crackles. The voice comes low, worn, but still carrying weight across the dead air. You're still tuned in, still breathing. That's more than I can say for the land around us. Every mile I travel, it feels like another scar cut into the earth. The rivers are gone. The trees stand like skeletons bare, brittle ash-colored bones of what once was green. Even the sky doesn't look like sky anymore. It's not blue, not grey, just a heavy haze of dust that chokes the horizon, pressing down on your lungs, until every breath feels like punishment. The disaster hasn't plateaued its building. Every day it grows sharper, harder, more merciless. The storms don't come to quench, they come to kill. Last night, lightning rolled across the valley. Without rain, bolts tearing into the dry brush, igniting wildfires that run faster than any man on foot. The flames don't just burn, they consume whole stretches of land, reducing them to glowing bones in hours, and me. I'm running out of everything. Asterisk, my water supply hit bottom 2 days ago. The last drops went to keep the radio circuits from overheating. A stupid choice, maybe, but this voice, this broadcast, it's the only thing that proves I'm still here, still human, food. What I have left could fit in my pocket. A handful of dried beans, stale crackers I found in a storm-wrecked gas station, one can of peaches I've been saving for a moment I'm scared will never come. Fuel's gone too. The generator wheezed its last cough last week. Without it, nights are just silence and dark, pierced only by the sounds of creatures I can't always place, some of them human, some of them not. You'd think the collapse of governments and power grids would be the end. No, that was only the first cut. The real death is slower. The land itself betrays you, until every step feels like treason against your own survival. Asterisk, I ran into others today. Survivors, if you want to call them that. 3 men on the highway outside what used to be Boone, dust-masked, rifles slung across their shoulders, eyes sunken like the last drops of water had been wrung from their skulls. They didn't ask me. Questions they demanded. Food, weapons, my boots. One of them even wanted the radio. I told them it doesn't work without juice, but they didn't care. Desperation has a way of stripping sense. I managed to walk away, barely. Sometimes words can keep you alive. Sometimes silence can. Sometimes the only thing keeping you breathing is the fact that your enemies are too tired, too broken to chase. But make no mistake, they're out there, whole bands of them. Raiders, survivalist groups, turned feral. They roam the wastelands, not searching for survival, any more searching for dominance. In a world where water's worth more than gold ever was, kindness is an extinct currency. Asterisk still, Through all of this, there's talk, a whisper that spreads like wildfire, because hope is the only thing that still burns in people's hearts. They say there's a place up north, past the old riverbeds, a reservoir untouched, a valley shielded by mountains where water still flows. Some say it's guarded by militias. Some say it's run by scientists who found a way to pull water from the air. Others swear it's nothing but a myth of fantasy dreamed up by dying tongues to make their final days bearable. I don't know if it's real. I don't know if I should believe. But here's the thing. Without something to move toward, you rot where you stand, and the earth around me, it's already rotting. Asterisk, I find myself split down the middle. Part of me wants to chase the rumor, cling to the possibility that there's still a chance for survival beyond scavenging and killing. Another part whispers the truth. I don't want to admit that it could just be another lie. Another trap set by raiders to bait the desperate trust. Is a dangerous thing now. Do I put faith in the whispers of strangers? Do I gamble the last of my strength on a dream? Or do I dig in here, clutch what little I have left, and fade into the silence like the rest? Hope and despair sit side by side in me. Every time I take a step north, I feel both pushing one, urging me forward, the other dragging me down. Asterisk, maybe it helps to know why. Maybe it doesn't. But I'll tell you anyway. The drought isn't random. It's not just bad luck. The storms shifted years. Agoclimat belts pushed further north. What once brought spring rains now brings only dry heat and rolling dust clouds. Groundwater's evaporated faster than aquifers can refill. And when you cut down trees for fuel, when the soil turns to dust, the land loses its grip on the sky. It stops pulling in clouds, stops breathing. It's called desertification. Once it takes hold, it spreads, like rot in a wound, like fire in dry brush. That's what we're living in. Not just a drought. Not just a disaster, a full transformation of the land beneath us. The birth of a desert where once there was life, asterisk, and it's only getting worse. 2 nights ago, I heard gunfire in the distance. Not the sharp crack of warning shots, the long stutter of someone emptying a clip. When I climbed the ridge at dawn, I saw smoke trailing up from a burned-out farmhouse. Whoever lived there, whoever fought for it, they're ash now. That's what this world does. It eats the weak, then circles back for the strong, every day. I ask myself the same question. How much longer until it circles back for me? Asterisk, so if you're listening out there, if you've got ears tuned to this signal and lungs still drawing breath, hold on. Even if hope feels like a lie, it's the only fuel we have left. Maybe tomorrow I'll find the strength to chase the whispers. North, maybe tomorrow I'll finally learn if that reservoir is real, or just another mirage in a land made of them. Until then, keep moving, keep breathing, keep fighting, because the disaster isn't slowing down, and neither can we. The radio hums, static folding over itself. Then the voice cuts out. Asterisk, I never expected it to hit me like this. Not the heat, not the dust, not even the scorcher's eye thought I had. Learned to anticipate danger. But some things the world throws at you can't be predicted. I'd been moving north for days, following rumors, following hope, following the faint possibility that there was still a place where water ran free. My feet were cracked, blistered, my arms raw from hauling my pack through the ruins. Each step was a negotiation with the scorched earth beneath me, each breath a gamble in dust-choked air. And still I pushed forward. Then it came, a storm unlike. Any I'd seen. Not the usual dust squalls, not the lightning-thick heat storms that rolled across the plains. This one was alive. The sky darkened to black, so sudden it felt like night had swallowed the day. The wind arrived before the rain, a living force tearing at the ground, lifting dry soil in knives that cut my skin. I dropped to my knees, mouth open, coughing, trying to shield my eyes from the grit. And then I saw it. Through the swirling chaos, a glimmer. Not lightning, not fire. Something else water. A pool of movement that reflected the storm in fractured light. My heart seized. Could it really be? After everything, after all the dust, the death, the lies of whispers and rumors, was it real? I ran, or I tried to. My legs screamed, my lungs burned. The storm was relentless, thrashing at me from every side. And then the first choice came. The storm or the water. One path led directly into the eye of the tempest. A corridor of wind so strong it could rip me apart. The other path, back toward nothing. Back toward dust and hunger and silence. I hesitated. Seconds stretched like hours. In that pause, I heard the wind carrying voices, some human, some not. Raiders, they were here. They had followed me, tracked. My movements from the North Ridge. They had been waiting for someone foolish enough to chase the rumor. They had been waiting for me and the water. It shimmered ahead, tantalizing, cruel in its promise. I had to decide. Move forward, risk the storm and the scorches, or turn back and accept another day of dying slowly in the dust. I ran. The storm hit like a living wall. I stumbled, fell, my pack tumbling, my radio clanging against the rocks. My hands tore at the earth to pull myself upright. The wind tried to throw me backward, tried to break me, and all around me the storm's teeth ripped the sky open. Sheets of acidic rain, black lightning arcing through the clouds, the smell of ozone and dust. Filling my nostrils, I could hear the scorches shouting, cursing, chasing, but I couldn't stop, couldn't think. All I could see was that glimmer, that small, impossible hope shimmering through chaos. And then I reached it. A creek, pure water, clear, cold, running over rocks that hadn't seen life in decades. The storm hit harder here, the wind tugging at my hair, my clothes, my bones, but I didn't care. I sank to my knees, hands plunging into the water, feeling it cool me, feel me alive again. It wasn't much, not enough to wash away the weeks of dust and decay, not enough to refill my body entirely, but it was real. Real water, real hope. Asterisk, but survival doesn't come without cost. The scorches were here. They had cut me off. One of them raised a rifle, trained it on me, and barked a command. My hands froze in the water. I thought about turning, about running again, but there was nowhere to go. Behind me, the storm. Beside me, death. Ahead of me, survival. I did the only thing I could. I spoke, not into the radio, not into the static, into the wind, into the chaos, into the moment itself. I've made it this far. I will not let you take it from me. I don't know why they hesitated. Maybe they respected desperation. Maybe the storm was already doing its work on them. Maybe they just weren't expecting someone to fight back with nothing but conviction. Whatever the reason, it bought me. Seconds I used to scoop water into my pack. Seconds I used to rise to my feet and charge forward into the creek bed. Slipping, sliding, dragging my pack through mud and stone. The bullets tore the air behind me. One grazed my shoulder, cutting, burning. Pain was sharp, but it was confirmation. I was alive. I was still alive. And then the ground betrayed them. A fissure opened along the creek bed, swallowing the nearest scorcher and the rifle he was pointing. The earth itself shifted violently, ripping into the remaining two, forcing them to retreat into the storm. I didn't wait to watch them fall entirely. I didn't have time. I had water to secure. When the tremor subsided, I collapsed beside the creek. The storm still roared above me, but it had passed its worst. The water ran clear, shimmering like fractured glass beneath the black sky. I cupped it, drank greedily, letting it fill every dry cavity in my body. And in that moment, I realized I had a choice to make, not just about survival, but about the future. I could stay here, hold this place for myself, a lone survivor clinging to a trickle of life, or I could try to save something bigger, someone else, anyone else who might stumble this way, anyone who might still be listening. I thought about Alina, thought about the child I tried to save, thought about everyone who had been lost in the collapse, and for the first time in months, I felt a fire that wasn't just desperation, a fire that wasn't just survival, a fire that might be hope. I made my decision. The creek would be my refuge. Yes, but it would also be a signal. I scavenged what I could, metal scraps to mark a path, rocks stacked into signs visible from the ridge, remnants of my radio equipment rigged into a crude transmitter. It wouldn't reach far, but it might. Reach someone. It might save someone. And then I sat there, letting the storm pass fully, letting the water wash the blood from my hands, letting myself think for the first time in weeks. I made it. I survived. And now I can do more than survive. But the storm isn't over. The storm never is. Even as I write this, even as I broadcast into the static, the earth trembles beneath me. I can feel it in my bones, in the water beneath my fingers. The land wants to reclaim everything, wants to remind us we are small, fragile, temporary. I think about the scorchers, and the ones like them, those who will come looking, drawn by rumors, of water, drawn by the human instinct for dominance. I think about the storms that will come, larger, deadlier, unstoppable. And yet, I also think about the creek, about the water, about the small acts of defiance we can manage in a world that wants to erase us. I have survived this far. I will survive further, not just for myself, but for anyone who might hear this voice and believe that survival is still possible. And in that moment, I understood something fundamental. The apocalypse doesn't end with the collapse of cities, the death of rivers, or the burning of forests. It ends only when we stop fighting, when we stop believing that life, however fragile, is worth defending. I will fight. I will defend. I will live. And as long as I breathe, I will keep speaking into the static, so someone out there, somewhere, can hear that even when the ground heaves beneath our feet, even when the storm rages above, we are not gone, not yet, because in that creek, in that moment, amid storm and tremor and threat, I found a fragment of the world worth saving, and sometimes a fragment is enough. Asterisk, the storm passed. Or maybe it didn't. Maybe the storm is never really gone, only its worst. Fury ebbs, leaving behind a hollow echo that whispers in your ears every time the wind moves across the land. I stayed by the creek through the night, letting the water soothe the cuts and bruises, letting it wash away the layer of dust that had become part of me. I survived. I had no illusions about that being permanent. Survival isn't a state. It's a moment stretched thin, a breath borrowed from a world that wants to reclaim everything. But in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Certainty, clarity, the knowledge that I had acted when it counted, that I had chosen life even when the cost was steep. The creeks, small, fragile, but alive would be my anchor. I spent the following days reinforcing the banks, carving shallow channels to catch runoff from the mountains, marking the way with crude rock formations so that anyone who came looking might find it. I rigged the last of my portable radio equipment into a makeshift transmitter. It wasn't much. The signal barely crawled across the horizon, but it would reach someone, somewhere that too was part of survival, not just living, but leaving. Signs, breadcrumbs for others to follow. Asterisk, the land around me had changed. Trees that had looked brittle and dead now showed signs of faint green, shoots curling from scorched branches as though life itself refused to be extinguished. The wind had scoured the dust from the rocks, leaving them glinting in the sun, strange reminders that the earth endures even as it rages. I knew this wasn't the end of disaster, only a pause of breath before the next upheaval. But it was enough to remind me that not everything was gone. I walked the creek's edge, scanning for any sign of movement. The scorchers were gone, but I knew they'd return. Predators always do. Every shadow could be a threat, every rustle a warning. And yet, I felt less alone. The water ran, the soil still breathed faintly, and even the wind harsh and biting seemed to carry a promise that the world was not yet entirely lost. Asterisk, I thought about the choices I'd made, the people I had met, lost along the way, the child, the family, the fleeting glimpses of other survivors. Each encounter had left scars deeper than any storm or heat wave. Yet, for all the pain, I realized that these memories were what tethered me to the world. Survival isn't just about food, water, or shelter. It's about what you fight for. It's about refusing to let memory and hope die in the dust. And in that reflection, I understood something vital. Hope is not fragile because it is weak. Hope is fragile because it is precious. It must be nurtured carefully, protected fiercely, shared sparingly, and yet sometimes boldly. That is why I chose to stay at the creek, to signal, to leave a mark. Someone might find it, someone might drink, someone might live because I refused to give in completely. I remembered the radio broadcasts before the collapse. Those voices had once felt distant, unreal, belonging to a world I could barely imagine. Now I am that voice, speaking through the static, hoping to reach anyone else clinging to life in the wasteland. It's a strange reversal, from listener to messenger, from follower to guide. And though the burden is heavy, I carry it willingly. Asterisk, the creek itself was a small victory, but a real one. I found edible plants growing along its bank's mossy shoots, tiny tubers hiding beneath the rocks, a few wild berries that had survived. The storms, the water was clean enough to drink without fear of immediate illness, though I boiled some in a makeshift pot to be safe. Every sip filled not just my stomach, but my resolve. I began to catalogue the resources in my new refuge, pockets, of shade from jagged cliffs, rocks that could shield from wind, small hollows to trap rainwater. The knowledge felt like armor. Knowledge has always been my strongest weapon. Where bullets fail, understanding survives. Where brute force ends, awareness begins. And yet, the tension never left. Every night, I slept lightly, ears straining for the approach of raiders, or the tremor of the ground opening beneath me. Every day, I rationed water carefully, calculated how long supplies might last if I was stranded here alone. This was the paradox of survival, even in a place that offered life. You never fully relax. You cannot. Asterisk, the storm had brought clarity, but it also left scars. Rocks were uprooted, trees splintered, soil washed into channels that now threatened to collapse. The creek, though alive, was fragilisely poisoned, easily dried out if the rains didn't return. I understood then that even the hope I had discovered was conditional. Life in this world is never guaranteed. It is negotiated constantly. I observed how nature responded. Small insects returned to the water, cautious, delicate. Birds, gaunt and wary, skimmed along the creek's surface. A fox, thin as a shadow, drank before darting back into the brush. The world was healing, yes, but on its own terms, at its own slow, indifferent pace. Survival for humans is only a part of the story. We are not masters here. We are guests, temporary observers in a land that is alive and unpredictable. Asterisk, I looked at myself in the creek's reflection. The face staring back was gaunt, skin sunbeaten, eyes sharp with both exhaustion and resolve. I had changed. The person who fled from the scorchers, who hesitated in the storm, who doubted the whispers of water, that person was gone. I had crossed into something else, someone willing to take risks, willing to endure pain, willing to act not just for themselves, but for others who might need guidance, protection, hope. There is a strange clarity in moments like this, when the world threatens to erase you completely, when every instinct screams to give up, to fade, to hide. You discover what matters. And for me, it is not revenge, it is not conquest, it is simply survival, paired with the act of preserving life wherever I can. Even if that life is mine alone, even if that life is fleeting, it is worth defending. I began to prepare, not for safety, not for comfort, but for continuity. I reinforced my small camp, setting markers along the paths leading to the creek. I collected whatever bits of metal and plastic I could find to filter water or signal from a distance. I practiced walking quietly, moving through the debris without alerting predators, human or otherwise. I reflected on the lessons of the past months, the cruelty of the scorchers, the fragility of hope, the unpredictability of the storms. Each lesson sharpened me, each loss tempered me, and yet it was not bitterness that took hold, it was resolve. Resolve to endure, to adapt, to continue, because the world doesn't pause for grief. It doesn't wait for recovery. It moves, relentlessly, violently, without regard for human plans. And if you intend to survive, you must move with it, or against it, as best you can. Asterisk, I wonder about the people I have met, and those I haven't. About communities that may have survived in isolation, tucked away in valleys or underground shelters. About the ones who didn't make it. The thought is both sobering and motivating. We are fragile creatures in a fragile world, but our tenacity, our insistence on living, is something even the storms cannot fully erase. I realized that my scratchy voice cutting through static are more than just messages of survival. They are proof that someone is still fighting, proof that hope, however small, persists, and that persistence can ripple, can inspire, can guide others toward life when all seems lost. Asterisk, as I sit by the creek, watching its fragile current. Wind through the battered landscape, I understand that survival alone is not enough. To endure in a world that rages against you is meaningless if there is no purpose, no connection, no act of recognition that life still matters. So I signal, I write markers, I leave hints, I speak into the static. And in these acts, however small, I find meaning, meaning in continuity, in remembrance, in hope. The dust will rise again, the storms will return. The earth may tremble beneath my feet, but for now the creek runs. For now there is water, and for now I am alive, thinking, reflecting, planning for the days to come. Asterisk the creek is a reminder of fragility and resilience. The storms have passed, yet their lessons remain. The world is still broken, still treacherous, still capable of consuming anyone who hesitates too long. But in surviving, in enduring, in witnessing life where death sought to dominate, I have found a tenuous balance. The radio hums quietly, powered by the last functioning batteries I salvaged. It carries my voice out into the wasteland, hoping, always hoping, that someone, somewhere, is listening. Maybe they will find the creek. Maybe they will drink from its water. Maybe they will survive because someone refused to give up. And as I look up at the horizon, asterisk, the creek runs steady now, though its voice is quieter than the storms that tore across the land. I sit on a fractured rock at its edge, hands cupped in the cool water, letting it trickle through my fingers like seconds slipping through the cracks of time. The storm has passed, but I know there will be others. Not just storms, but the endless challenges of survival in a world that seems bent on erasing us. I think about the miles behind Metha cities turned to ash, the towns swallowed by dust and rot, the bridges that once carried lives and dreams now crumbling into nothing. I think about the faces of those I have lost, the laughter, the fear, the despair. I think about the scorchers, about how easily cruelty can masquerade as strength. And I think about this water, small, fragile, a lifeline amidst ruin. Hope is fragile, yes, but it is also stubborn. It survives in the smallest things, a trickle of creek water, a whisper carried on the wind, a radio signal crackling through static. I may be alone here, but I am not powerless. Each day I drink, each day I signal, each day I mark the path for. Someone else it is a quiet rebellion against the world's insistence on ending us. The night falls quickly now, faster than it ever did before. Darkness has taken on a weight, a suffocating presence that presses against my skull. Yet in that darkness, I find a strange comfort. It reminds me that survival is not about grandeur or glory. It is about persistence. It is about showing up every day to meet the challenges, to bear the pain, to keep living even when the world has no reason to let you. Tomorrow will bring the same uncertainty it always does. The storms will return, the winds will howl, and the earth will shift beneath my feet. Resources will dwindle. Hunger and thirst will gnaw at me again. Raiders, scavengers, and the desperate will test every choice I make. But I will face it, as I have faced everything else, because the alternative surrenders not an option I am willing to entertain. There is a rhythm to survival, a cadence shaped by endurance. Wake, scout, signal, drink, rest, repeat. Every motion, every decision is a declaration that life matters, even in a world that seems to deny it. I have learned to measure time not by hours or days, but by the water in the creek, by the tremor of the earth, by the passage of storms. It is a harsh, unforgiving metric, but it is honest. And in honesty, I find clarity. I speak into the radio. Tonight, my voice shaking with both exhaustion and resolve. If you are out there, keep moving, keep searching, keep surviving. There is water here, life here. It is small, but it is enough. You are not alone. You are never alone. And as long as you breathe, there is a chance. It may be the last anyone ever hears of me, or it may reach someone desperate, someone weary, someone on the brink. That thought keeps me going. Even if no one ever responds, the act of sending my voice into the void is a declaration of existence, a refusal to vanish. Quietly, I have come to accept that survival is not a finite achievement. There is no safe place, no final victory, no reset button that restores the world to what it once was. There is only the present, the sun heating the cracked earth, the wind slicing through the canyons, the creek whispering beneath my hands. And there is action, small, deliberate, imperfect, but necessary. I remember the first time I heard the radio after everything fell apart. A distant, crackling voice telling me that I wasn't completely forgotten, that even in the rubble, the human spirit can endure. I want to be that voice now, to pass the torch of hope along in the only way I know how. A voice can outlast walls, fire, and storms. A voice can reach across miles of devastation and remind someone that survival is possible. The wind carries a scent of rain, a faint promise that not everything has been destroyed. I don't know if it will reach the creek in any meaningful way, or if it will simply pass by, teasing life before retreating. But even that small sign matters. It is proof that the world still breathes, that life finds a way, that persistence can be rewarded in the smallest increments. I think about the choices I made during the storm, about risking my life for that. Water, about standing against those who would have taken it from me. I think about every second I hesitated, and every second I acted. Every choice carved the path I walk now, and I understand something essential. Survival is not passive. It demands action, courage, and sometimes pain. It demands that we fight even when the world seems insurmountable. As night deepens, I feel the weight of exhaustion pressing into my bones. Yet I also feel the spark that has carried me this far, the stubborn ember of hope that refuses to die. It is fragile, yes, but embers can ignite, and even a single flame can illuminate the darkest. Night, I tend it carefully, shelter it from wind and rain, feed it with resolve and memory and vision. Tomorrow, I will scout the ridge again. I will check the markers. I will measure the creek's flow. I will maintain the transmitter. I will look for signs of life, for whispers of other survivors. I will endure. And I will speak, because the act of speaking, of witnessing, of recording the world as it is and as it might become, that is my rebellion, my resistance, my reason for continuing. I don't know what tomorrow will hold. Perhaps more storms, perhaps emptiness, perhaps death. Perhaps someone will find this place, drink from the creek, hear the signal, and survive. Perhaps not. All I know is this: for today, for now, I have enough to keep going, enough to fight for one more sunrise, enough to breathe, to think, to exist in defiance of a world determined to end us. So I whisper into the night, a plea and a promise: stay alive, stay human, keep moving, keep hoping, keep fighting. The world may be gone, the cities may have crumbled, the rivers may have dried, but as long as we breathe, we are still here. And as long as we are here, there is a chance. The creek murmurs. Beneath my hands, the wind hums through the broken cliffs. The night stretches ahead. uncertain, merciless, yet alive. And I will endure. I will endure because that is all we can do. Because survival is not a gift, is a choice, and I choose. It hope is fragile, yes, but in a world as broken as this one, even a fragment is enough to keep fighting. And for me, for now, that is enough. Asterisk.